Okay, I think we are ready to go this afternoon. Welcome back, everyone, to another Weather Wednesday. I'm Eric Berger, the editor of Space City Weather. With me is Matt Lanza, my partner in crime on the website. And this week we have Sam Luna, who is the Director of Business Development for Texas at Reliant, moderating us. So Sam, let's get it started.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. Good afternoon. Welcome to everybody. Just want to ask a quick question to get us started. What's the weather look like currently for us?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a beautiful morning down here where I live on the south side of Houston. I had my windows open, working in my home office, and it felt pretty spectacular for May. Today is obviously going to be a sunny, beautiful day, and then this evening I would encourage people to try to get outside if they can, because it's going to be spectacular as the sun starts to head toward the horizon and with the dry air. So it's going to be super.
Awesome. I know my kids and I are planning around Mother's Day this weekend for our wife and our moms and our family. What do you guys see on the front for us for this weekend's weather around Mother's Day?
So it's going to be nice. It's going to be pleasant here. It's going to be sunny and cool, but by gosh, if you're heading off toward the east, which you're probably not because not so many people are traveling right now, but if you have your mom lives on the East Coast, it's going to be quite cold. Matt, what's it going to be like out there?
Yeah, as someone whose mom does live on the East Coast, I can tell you it is going to get quite chilly. I always like to say, as somebody who used to live in upstate New York, if it gets really, really cold up there this time of year, that means it's going to be beautiful down here. Temperatures up there probably drop into the 30s and 40s, may not even get out of the 40s for a few days in parts of upstate New York and New England. They may even have snow up there as well, which is not unheard of in May. But by the time you get to May, you're just ready for summer. It's kind of how September and October are here, where we're ready for some cooler weather. That's how this time of year is for folks up there.
Yeah, I'm not ready for cooler weather in September, October. I'm more like, I would say I'm desperate for that first row front.
I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Extend that as far as we can. Well, thanks for giving us an update on the current weather. I'd like to go over some questions that were submitted either on the blog or from last week. And I would also like to remind anybody watching now, if you have any questions, please put them down in the comments of the Facebook live stream. And as we get to that, we'll hopefully have some time left at the end of this and pick up a couple of those questions as well. A question that I find interesting, Nancy submitted. I live along the I-10 corridor and have thought about this before. Is it the Interstate 10 actually used as a landmark to describe where differences in the temperature and rainfall could fall, or does I-10 actually influence it? It's really large, it's a change in terrain, it possibly generates a lot of heat. So wondering, Nancy was asking about that.
So that's a good question. She's referencing the urban heat island effect. And you get that sort of from a large area footprint like the city of Houston. Locally, the Katy Freeway itself doesn't have that. So it's really just a landmark. Pretty much everyone in the Houston area knows where I-10 is. And so if we say rain showers are more likely north of I-10 or south of I-10, it's just kind of an easy point of reference. A funny thing is, an even more useful landmark sometimes would be Interstate 69. But not everyone knows what Interstate 69 is because it's Highway 59, it's US 59, it's the Southwest Freeway. So I always struggle when I write, and I want to say because oftentimes it's a really good barometer for this side of 59 for the coastal areas and the other side of 59 for inland areas. But usually I just punt on it because what do you call it, right? And anyway, it's just an easy landmark for us to use.
Yeah, you definitely hit on Houstonians and our love for giving every major road at least 2 or 3 names that can definitely confuse visitors or people that are newly moving here. Have another question, something I was reading about and learned about from this came up from Daniel, and there's a few questions asked around this. Actually, what are capping inversions? And then the second part of that is, what causes a capping inversion to dissipate?
Yes, that's a good question, and it's one that we always talk about a lot, and we hear a lot from people that always want to have answers. So typically in the atmosphere, right, as you go higher up in the atmosphere, the temperature actually gets a little bit colder. The air gets colder as you go up with height. Well, when you have a capping inversion, what happens is as you go up, all of a sudden you'll just hit this random layer and temperatures will just spike and warm up. It can be because of air coming out of Mexico. It could be any sort of thing can drive that influence that, and all of a sudden the temperature warms up. So what that does is effectively creates almost, we call it a cap. It's like a lid on the atmosphere that prevents clouds from really getting much above that level. So what happens is it has to break. So days when we have thunderstorm chances, we have this cap in place a lot of times. And, we always say until the cap breaks, we won't have thunderstorms. Well, what'll happen, for that to happen, you need a couple things. Either at the ground level, the temperatures have to warm up. So days like in the low to mid 90s are usually good candidates for breaking the cap, where the temperature warms up to a certain point, you hit that temperature, and then all of a sudden that cap breaks and thunderstorms just blow up almost out of nowhere. Or you need a front, some kind of boundary, something that comes through and acts as a trigger to set things off and wipe out this, this capping inversion, send a little bit of cooler air back into the upper atmosphere. So it's very fickle. A lot of times it's very difficult to predict. Models don't always do a great job with it, but we know it's here a lot based on our geography here in Houston, our proximity to Mexico and the Rockies. We just almost always seem to have a cap here. We have to break it somehow, and those are really the two main ways to do that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like feast or famine, right? Because, if the cap breaks, you're going to see some potentially really violent thunderstorms. So the cap, like if we're sitting in the middle of August and really desperate for some rain, and it's like another day, the capping inversion is there and it's not going to break, we're like, oh man. But like if you've got a major like spring storm system coming through, the cap may actually prevent you from getting this really gnarly weather. So it's both good and bad, but it's something we obviously deal with, on a day-to-day basis along the Gulf Coast.
Got it. Thanks for that, Matt and Eric. We've had interesting, now that we're all at home more and we've seen, kids are definitely watching this Weather Wednesday update. We actually had some kids from the parish school submit some questions, and I'm excited today. I have a special guest, my daughter Ava, who's going to join us and help ask a couple of those questions, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Ava's actually got our first question.
Why do rainbows go away and come?
The old question about rainbows. So I have a 1.5-year-old, and he just loves rainbows. So we talk about this with him all the time. So, to get rainbows, you need a couple things. You need to have sunshine and you need to have rain. So what happens is as the rain falls, and let's say the rain is moving away and the sun comes back out, you have your back to the sun. So the sun's behind you. The light from the sun will hit the raindrops individually and then basically just kind of scatter. There's a whole bunch of technical things that happen there, but for all intents and purposes, it scatters, and you can see different colors show up, different wavelengths of the spectrum, light spectrum kind of show up, and that's how you get your rainbow basically. And it always forms, the same way with, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So you always have to have that rainfall, and you always have to be standing with your back to the sun, and that's when you see a rainbow. And the cool thing about rainbows is that you're the only one who can see that exact rainbow. It's not something physical there. It's just something that your eyes are telling you is there. So it's not real, but it is to you. And that's what's really cool about it. So somebody else could be standing 10 feet away from you. They're seeing a rainbow, but it's different than the one you're seeing.
Wow. I didn't know that you could increase your chances to see a rainbow, sun at your back, and then wherever the rain fell in front of you.
Yeah. It's pretty
awesome.
Cool.
That is. Do we have another question?
Yes. Aaron wants to know, is it going to be sunny tomorrow?
Yeah, so tomorrow is Thursday, and it is going to be sunny. If you look outside today, there's lots of sunshine, it's crystal clear blue skies, and that's because we've got this high pressure system that's overarching us. It's preventing the air at the surface from rising, and we've got this nice flow from the north to the south, keeping us dry. And that pattern is going to start to begin to change tomorrow. The winds are going to turn around from the northeast to come from the south and southeast. But it's going to take time for that moisture to build and sort of get a process where clouds can form. So tomorrow we expect to be mostly sunny, maybe some clouds developing late in the evening or the overnight. But yeah, it should be another pretty nice day tomorrow.
Okay, so Aaron can plan to play outside.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, just checking on questions and time. Let's see. We did have one other question from Dwight, who asked, and allergy related as well. It's been a relatively mild spring so far, and we've had lower humidity temperature levels and cooler temps, particularly at night. What effect is this having on the pollen counts?
Right. So Houston has two main pollen seasons this time of year. Starting in January or February, right as we're coming out of the coldest part of winter, you start to get the tree pollen season. And that can last for weeks or months. And it's, for me, that's the worst one. It can be pretty overpowering. And then as we start to get into spring, that sort of fades away when the warmer weather comes and we start to get grass pollen. We're kind of in the middle of grass pollen season. So a couple of things can affect this. First of all, if we have a really late cold winter, like not this year, it moderated pretty quickly. But if winter sticks with us later and summer comes sooner, then that shrinks the time that we could have this really bad allergy season. This year, it's been a fairly long allergy season. The other thing is, if we get heavy rains consistently, and some parts of the Houston region did get that this spring, and other parts like the southern half really didn't, that can kind of help knock down tree pollen levels for a short time. So it really is a matter of, getting from the depth of winter into summer-like conditions. And now, not this week, but probably in a week or two, we're going to be almost to summer. And so that's when you'll start to see pollen season really, really fold down.
Got it. So keep the Allegro around. Looks like in the Facebook Live, looks like we've had a couple questions. Would you guys talk some more about tornadoes in Houston and the possibility with that happening?
I'm going to let Matt handle that because he's done some excellent work for us on looking back at some of the major tornadoes that have hit Houston.
Yeah, so Houston itself, you don't really think of as being super tornado prone, but I think the most tornado warnings that are issued in any county in the country actually is in Harris County. A lot of that has to do with the number of hurricanes that we've seen over the years. It's just we get a lot of tornado warnings. They're just usually not very large, strong tornadoes. They're usually quick, small damage paths, things like that. We have had some serious tornadoes here in the past. I believe it was in November of 1992 when Channelview, just east of Houston, got hit by a tornado that was rated an F4. So tornadoes are rated on a scale that goes from 0 to 5, with obviously 5 being the most extreme, and 4 not being any slouch either. And it did some tremendous damage. And that actually was part of a tornado outbreak that impacted Katy, central Houston as well. There were a couple tornadoes near downtown. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that we see tornadoes here in the Houston area. The real strong ones typically would be in the spring or the fall, as is the case in many other parts of the country. Our fall tornado season here can actually sometimes be worse than our spring tornado season. That's kind of a unique function of the southeastern United States. That's just kind of how it goes. As far as things go right now and going forward, we're still in severe weather season technically. We're not quite into summer here. Usually our daytime thunderstorms during summer usually don't get that severe. They're nasty storms, sure, but they're not technically severe and usually don't produce tornadoes. But every now and then you can get one. There's nothing unique really about this year right now that concerns us. But as with any sort of spring storm that we get going forward, we'll keep an eye on it.
Awesome, thanks. Question, some people saw the Blue Angel fly over today, and there's been a couple questions. Aaron asked, what does the weather look like going into Friday's flyover as well?
Yeah, Friday the weather is going to be less favorable for that than today, certainly. The onshore flow that we're talking about kicking in on Thursday is really going to kind of be blowing full force on Friday. And so we expect a mostly cloudy day. And then in the afternoon, an approaching cold front could help start to drive some thunderstorms across the region. I'm not sure it's going to rain during the daytime, certainly first part of the day Friday, but it will not be clear and sunny like today.
Got it. Probably have time for one more question. I think this was probably talked about some on your blog as well. Gerald was asking about, are balloons still being only released from Corpus and Lake Charles and not closer to Houston? And some of the discussion around the lack of planes flying from the pandemic going on, and the effect to accurately forecast for you guys and for anybody.
Yeah, so it's true that the weather balloons that we talked about last week are released from Lake Charles and from Corpus Christi, and not from the Houston office of the National Weather Service. During inclement weather, sometimes the Texas A&M University or the University of Houston will release them, or some private weather companies in the region will send them up and share that data. I think that happens, I don't know. I think it's a couple dozen times a year maybe. And certainly when there's stuff we're concerned about, you sometimes get that data, but it's not on a consistent basis.
Thanks, Eric.
I guess I would jump in about the lack of aircraft observations too. Yes, we've seen that certainly with less flights going on. Whether or not that's impacting current forecasts, your guess is as good as mine. It seems to be consensus that it could have some impact. From some of the interesting things I've read from some other meteorologists, has talked a little bit about actually the impacts may affect more of the shorter term forecasts, with thunderstorms during the day and things like that. I want to say a couple Saturdays ago when nobody was really expecting storms and we got rained on all afternoon in parts of the area, that may have been sort of the first real example of maybe that having some sort of impact. There's no real way to know though until you can conduct real research on it. So for now, we're kind of operating under the assumption that it'll have some impacts, but we'll do our best to mitigate them, but hopefully nothing too significant.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting study to be continued.
For sure.
Awesome.
Well, I think that's if that's all the time we've got for questions today. I just wanted to
Yeah.
take a moment to thank Matt and Sam as well for joining us. So maybe you can update us, Sam, on how Houstonians can prepare for warm weather in the months ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having us. And Reliant is always, really excited to partner with you guys and help power people's way in this time. And yeah, we are all at home a lot more. I think finding ways to conserve energy at home, we hope is helpful for everybody, and especially our Reliant customers. A couple energy efficiency tips I would like to share. One, take this opportunity to use your large appliances, your dishwasher, washer, and dryer in the evening or early in the morning when there's not as much load on the power grid. That will help. Also, if you'll reduce your home energy heat gain by using blinds or curtains or putting something in the window, especially in that strong western sun. If we can help keep your house cooler, it'll help reduce your AC's need to run as much. And then one of the things Ava, I know, is looking forward to tonight is she loves to eat outside. And actually, when you use your oven in the home, it increases your internal home temperature. So if you have the opportunity tonight in this great weather that we're enjoying right now, if you can use your outdoor grill or barbecue and enjoy a cookout, have a meal outside, and that'll reduce your need to continue to turn that AC cooler and cooler. We found just in our studies that every time you reduce your temperature by a degree below 78 degrees, that has about a 7% change in your energy usage. So small degrees can make a big difference on your energy bill.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. We'd just like to continue to ask people, if you have questions you'd like Matt and I to answer, please do submit them. You can submit them in the comments on this post or other posts on the website or on Facebook. And if you have positive feedback, please send that along to me. And if you have negative feedback, make sure that goes to Matt. Okay.
Matt, I'll let you take the negative feedback, and I'm sure you guys next week, and we know here at Reliant, we're excited about the announcement that you guys are going to make. So everybody stay tuned to spacecityweather.com or your email or blogs or other social ways you like to follow Matt and Eric. It'd be exciting.
Yeah, we've got that big announcement coming next week. All right, take care, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.